All right. Good evening, everyone. It's about 3 minutes in, and we are about to kick off. This is the final day of Going Global, Pan-Cultural Intelligence, and the Digital Revolution. We have here with us today Mrs. Okenifun Ajayi, who's got an immense amount of experience, an amazing heart, a very huge heart as well, towards education and development of the African continent, using that tool. But before we dive in, and before we yield her the microphone, I'll just give a brief introduction again of Going Global. So the Going Global has been a 3-day summit where we've talked about tech, we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about policy, we've talked about mindset, and we've talked about socio-economic development. And it's being brought by NDH, the Nigeria Development Hub, a modern, digitized, and delocalized chamber of business and commerce with sustainability and socio-economic reform at its heart. KK is a woman who's been with us for a while, since when this was just seed dealings. I mean, in some ways it probably still is. But yeah, she's a sister and also a mother. So without further ado, we'll yield the mic to Madam KK or K-Fun. Please feel free to introduce yourself. Let the who you are, what you do, your background, and your extensive work in the field of education in Nigeria in particular. So thank you so much for being here with us, Ms. KK.
Sure.
You have the microphone.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I mean, it's an amazing 3 days, and that's just it's like you mentioned, it was a dream run. It was great to see that now it's grown, it's blown up, and we're actually beginning to see that it is a living organism of its own right. And very soon, I mean, just following the way the conference has been and all of the gems, and it wasn't gems, it was even to execution. So many things people are already doing. I read that we're going to begin to reap the things that the Nigeria Development Hub is doing. My name is Okenifun Ajayi. I work principally in the education space. I'm totally crazy about education, right? But it's not just education. For me, education permeates every single thing that we do in our lives, our businesses, relationships. Every single thing that we do is founded on education. So if our education is, it honestly follows that everything else is going to be faulty, right? And that's why I say to people, don't think about education and just think the classroom. There's much more than that when you look at education, so much more. Because if all you look at is the classroom, then you're going to be thinking about the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs. And there's just so much more than that, right? And so that's what I'm hoping to do today, to open up our minds into what education standards really should be when we're thinking about it. So I got formally into education in 2009. I was working with a school, and I honestly, I fell in love with it. And then I started my own education business after I left the school for a bit. And then I went ahead and started something by myself. And what we did was different, but I truly knew that the impact that we're making radiated outwards. And that for me was really important, that in every sector where we were, with every reach that we had, we were making impact. It didn't matter what the names were, it was about the impact. And that's what we need to really begin to look at. What is the impact that we're making in education? I have my first degree from the University of Benin. But when I got into education, I then went ahead and did a lot of certifications. Harvard Graduate School of Education, Rutgers University in New Jersey, then some other certifications online. And then there's evidence-based education in the UK. A few things that I went to do just so that I'm really prepared for the sector that I live in. And then I don't put my head in the sand, right? So I'm looking at the different sector where I function and saying, what exactly should I be doing in the education space to actually prepare the students we have in our classrooms for the future? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And if the students are not prepared for the future, then that's a problem. And that's where I want to look at standards from. So when I look at standards, I think about the content. The content, of course, is the curriculum. And when we look at the curriculum, it's split up into three, right? You have the cognition, which is cognitive, the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs, right? The thinking, the problem solving, all of that is cognition. But then there's the affective. Affective has to do with how does this thing I am doing affect other people. But standard certification, very, very rarely do we think about the affective part of it. It is the affective part that helps a child who left and has governance understand that I'm not going to steal all this and put it in my pocket because I'm going to affect people in my constituency, right? That is effective. And that is what we need to begin to look at when we look at education standards. Of course, then there's the final one. The final one is the psychomotor, which is what you can do. Too many times people come out of school, it's here. It's in their head. It shouldn't be in your head. If you're not able to think with what it is that you've learned, then have you really learned anything? No. And if you look at it, Emmanuel, that's how you've birthed this Nigerian Development Hub. It wasn't about what you studied in school. It was what you studied. How do you even connect it to some of the other things that are going on? How can you, via what you've studied, via leveraging your network, appeal to the emotional part of people? Because we truly need to develop the continent and get this going. And that's what you've done with this. And that, for me, is one standard we need to look at in education, our content. What is it? The second thing we need to look at is context. All of this content that we have developed or that we are developing, that we're giving the students, nursery, primary, secondary, university, within what context are we giving them? We need to bring it down into the African context. I am not one of those people that says, oh, I'm not one of those people, to be honest. Because we are right now, I do not believe that the backbone we need to run is fully developed. We cannot go back right now and start tying leaves around our bodies. Okay, so it might be great for the environment, but if one little part is doing things that are great for the environment, how is that really going to affect the climate? Not a lot, right? So we need to look at it holistically. So I'm not one of those people. I would say, what is the backbone that we can found whatever is happening in the West and bring it into Nigeria, into Africa, and Africanize it? For me, I think that's extremely important. So all of this learning going on, what is the African context? How do we build Africa? How do we use African examples? How do we look at case studies? How do we go into the communities and say, what really work in this community with regards to the content that we're developing? And that's something that I believe we need to look at when we're looking at standards of education. And that's not something that is happening across different platforms right now, across several different schools, across several different countries. But it is something that needs to begin to happen. The thing is communication of it. So how are people communicating, right? We know within the next 10 years, when you look at the skills that are required to be considered successful, communication ranks really highly up there, right? Because it's an interpersonal skill. It doesn't matter what amount of technology you have, there's still going to be a lot of communication, interpersonal skills. So communication is something that we also need to develop in our students. Every single time I try and speak to, let me say I'm trying to hire, and this person has fantastic certificates, fantastic CV, but then talk to me about what exactly you're going to be doing for me. They cannot, again, bring that knowledge that they've had in their head into the context within which they're using it and clearly articulate what to do. So our communication in terms of curriculum, in terms of our standards of learning, needs to go up. And that's why we have things like, oh, our literacy levels in Africa are low. No, our literacy levels in Africa are not low. We just need to put it within the context, and then we need to develop communication tools and methods that drive this outwards. That's what we need to look at. And then we're going to look at, the final thing I'm going to look at is the execution of education standards. And in execution of education standards, we cannot take away technology. We cannot take away digital learning. So what exactly are we doing when we're developing our content to ensure that digital is embedded in there? I mean, yesterday you guys were talking about cryptocurrency. You're talking about sustainability in the fashion sector. And all of those things were built on the backbone of technology. Education cannot be left behind. It's not going to work. So we need to begin to say to ourselves, what exactly are we doing? How are we executing all of the learning that is going on, all of the standards that we're putting together in areas of context? And again, technology gives us context, doesn't it? I'm here in Nigeria. I mean, SK is somewhere else. You are somewhere else, Emmanuel. But guess what? We're all here together. What? Why? Because we're riding on the backbone of technologies that are already existing. So what exactly are we going to use the technologies already existing such that when our students leave school, nursery, primary, secondary school, I mean, they're 9-year-old and they're developing apps and I'm using them on iPhones, right? And Samsung. So it's really not about the age and the level of exit from this education. It is what they're learning and what is happening in there. We need to begin to say, how do we make this happen? When we begin to make that happen, I truly believe that we would see, one, a proliferation of thinkers in our society. Two, we would see people who are not just thinkers, but who can actually look into the environment, solve the problems, because realize that they're connected to this. Three, we would see people who begin to take pride in Africa as Africans and say, you know what, we're Africans in Africa and we're going to make this work. And then diaspora intervention will be much meaningful because guess what? Context is there. So it's not so much that I'm struggling to survive, it's that I am surviving, I am doing well, and I'm channeling it to make sure that everybody else around me is also thriving. So that is honestly how I began, how I look at improving standards in education. It's not just a but these four really areas that we really need to begin to look at and systems that build frameworks, learning frameworks that drives every single student, even in our jobs, right? I remember I mentioned at the beginning that it's not just about the classroom, even in the offices. How many people are you connecting with, talking to, and they don't really know how they fit into an organization? There's a problem in that organization. The learning culture is faulty. And that again is something that we need to look at. We need to begin to take things out of the classroom and take them into the different areas where we need to make magic happen in our society. So yeah, that's it from me for now. And I'm going to move the mic back to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Mrs. KK. I think the next step, the next questions I'm going to ask are related to education and probably a confluence of everything that we've spoken about even prior to this moment, because I believe everything has led up to this. Started with leadership, mindset, and you touched on that as well. And it all boils down to education. I mean, in what we believe, myself and you, we believe in the power of words, and we believe in the power of ideation and ideas. So, and that can be encapsulated in education, because education is basically the communication of information, data in IT senses, and creation, for lack of a better terminology. So my first question is going to be geared along this axis. For Nigerians who have lost hope in that they can create something of meaningful value, or that they can sort of come up out of their current situations, or are looking to less than above board means, because we know that there's an issue we have at the moment with the youth in terms of crime rates and in terms of issues, who feel like they can go to school and then come out and not get jobs. What is your primary word of advice to them? What is your in a world that's now becoming digitized, and even at that we don't always use it for the good thing, for the best things, but what is your word of advice and encouragement and like hope that there's something they can see that's concrete, and that education, I mean, with the work you're doing as well, at the moment, we know that education has a bit of some things here and there. But with what we're trying to sort of push and build, that there is some sort of lights at the end of the tunnel. So that's my first primary question.
For people who have lost hope, sometimes you've lost hope because of what you're focusing on. if we focus on what is happening around us, almost like the waves that keep crashing, then we're going to feel overwhelmed. We're going to say to ourselves, I can't do this. It's going to overwhelm me as well. I'm hanging on a precipice, I'm hanging on a ledge, and I can't move from here because of all the waves. But if you don't look up and take your eyes away from the waves and say, you know what else is out there? Then you're always only going to see the waves. And so that's the first thing I'm going to say. Stop, move away from the current circle where you are. Take your eyes away from there. Move away physically if you have to, and just turn and look at something else. There are people who are still doing great things. Unfortunately, nobody talks about the great things people are doing in legit fashion, right? All that gets popularized is all of these really negative things that are going on, but the good things are still happening. For example, this is happening. So they need to re-educate their minds. They need to restyle their minds, because it is a mindset thing, right? They need to restyle their minds. There's so many opportunities that we don't like COVID, but it has opened up so many opportunities. So people need to say to themselves, where do I want to go? Right? And how can I get there? So be very, people like to add flowers and perfume to everything. Some things don't require flowers and perfume. They just require that you need to say to yourself, are you willing to do what other people are willing to get to where you need to go? If the answer is no, which it should be, then how are you going to move from point A to point B? Do a needs assessment. Who are the people that you can maybe begin to connect with? How do you even, can you even articulate where you want to go? So we need to look with it. Again, it's about context, right? Where am I right now in relation to where I want to be? How do I get there? Who do I need to get there? What are the things I need to stop doing? What are the things I need to begin to do? Hope is a state of mind, right? And a lot of times hope comes from what you perceive that you can reach out to. But if what you perceive and all that you're looking at are things that you cannot reach out to, it's going to look like a hopeless situation. But the minute you see something else, then you're like, oh, wow, this is something else. So you need to really just take your eyes away from that really dastardly situation where you are right now, where we are right now, and say, you know what? My cup, I have a cup, whether it is half full or half empty, at least I have a cup and I can collect something. And then start from there. Begin to build from there. Look for ways that you can connect with people. What do you have within yourself that people will even be interested in to want to build with you? And once you can do that and you can distinguish yourself, I truly believe that people will come to you. Let me give you an example. When I just started on my journey, I had people who said to me, "Oh, pay for television space, pay for TV, pay for this, blah 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 blah." And there is a place for PR. But I said to myself, the stage where I am right now, I don't need all of that. Imagine I started to get overwhelmed because I said to myself, how am I going to manage this? Right? But today, I'm not paid to be on television. Not once. I haven't paid to be on the Guardian newspaper, which is one of the foremost newspapers in Nigeria. Not once. Not for business day either. Why? The things that I was doing in my corner consistently drew the right sort of attention that I needed to take me higher. Now I'm thinking of PR, and yeah, that's fine because I built something. But when we have not built anything, we haven't even tried to build anything, and then we're saying we're hopeless. Of course, you are hopeless. You haven't tried to do anything. So you need to try to do something, and then that gets you out of that place. That's honestly what I would say. It might seem like it's a little harsh, but sometimes we don't need the flowers and the perfume. We just need to face our realities and move forward from there.
Thank you so much, Mr. KK. So, okay, the next question is going to be, what can be some practicable things that people in that position can do, probably even in regards to some of the work you've done in regards to what NDH currently is doing, to sort of get out of that space, and find a community that will put them in the right mind frame.
I mean, the first thing I would say is they need to connect with the NDH community. That's the first thing that I would say, because it's not just about education in the NDH community. We're looking at, honestly, a community, and a community is made up of so many different sectors. So they need to go and say to themselves, where I am right now, what exists, right? What do you have on the inside of you? Once you can adequately define what you have on the inside of you, it is then easier to connect it with those people that you want to go to. Right? Because the way, unfortunately, the world is people are going to say, what's in it for us? You know, and if you don't have anything to offer anybody, then chances are you might be part of a community, but you are not that part of a community that people see as impactful. So you need to, first of all, believe in yourself and say, I have something that I carry. And if you don't have something you carry, fact find. What are the things that you can do? You cannot say that you cannot do anything. You must be able to do something. In these days of technology, honestly, with as little as 1,000 naira, you can load it onto somewhere, a business center, something, somewhere, and go and surf the internet and learn and say to yourself every single day. Let me give you an example. I know I digress a little. So a member of my team has been trying to leave Nigeria. She wants to do her master's in the UK, but she hasn't been able to save enough money. So I said to her, I said, why do you want to go and study this thing in particular in the UK? I said, because if you go there, that's not where there's a shortage. This, and these areas are where there's a shortage. And she said, oh, really? I didn't know that. But by her connecting with me and being open and vulnerable with me, I could then connect her with what she needed to do. And she has started to do that. And already she's making so much traction in some other things that she could have been doing. And so that's the same thing, right? If you feel that you don't have hope and there's nothing you can do, then first of all, that's the wrong mindset. Look around you. Who can you hook up with? Who can you connect with? Can you clearly articulate where you want to go? If that is even the wrong thing, because of the wrong place, because you've clearly even said, this is my vision, this is my hope, these are my goals, you would find people who would say, oh, you know what, let me redirect you. And then you need to be ready to put in the work, right? If you're coming in and being part of the NDH community, you need to be ready to put in the work and say, I am ready to put in the work. Where do people need support? How can I develop myself? Because there is going to be an education platform, right? So people can hook up with that and say, what skill can I begin to learn off of this platform? And just by doing that already changes the dynamics of that particular individual or those particular individuals to move them towards where they want to be, right? But it's honestly, you are going to have to take a step and say, I'm going to do this. When you have taken that step, it's almost like the entire universe aligns and says, oh, let's help this person to do this. But if you don't do anything and you're expecting somebody to do it for you, it's not going to work.
Thank you so much, KK. That is so apt and so relevant to much of what we had discussed and even experienced within the NDH. I think often people confuse, and I'm not supposed to give submissions, but I'll just keep this short and then ask the final question. People confuse blessings with magic in the sense that they don't realize that good things come to those who work. I mean, people say good things come to those who wait, but good things come to those who are patient whilst they work. And that work aspect is what at least culturally we have. I think in Nigeria has sort of degraded a bit. I mean, we hear about the Nigerian time. We all hear about all these things that, quite frankly,
Yeah.
reduce our efficiency. Yeah, go
Yes, it
ahead.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I agree with
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that I agree. I actually agree with you. People these days just don't want to do the work, and that's not okay. You need to want to do the work. You need to be ready to do the work. You just need to be ready. I'm talking with a lot of youth, and sometimes I'm wondering, are you joking? Is this really your mindset? That even manna, right? After a while, what happened? The manna stopped because there's a time to be fed, and there's a time where you better get off your BUT, double T, and go get some work done. So yes, we need to change that. Things don't just happen. It's not scamming people out of their money. It's not about doing all these really horrible things. If everybody did that, why are they living in huts? It's just to engage the internet really and get people to where they need to be. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's so apt, and that leads perfectly into the next question. So, with the current status and nature of things in Nigeria, how can we build a community? I mean, with the hurdles and everything, but also with the upsides. How can we build a community that localizes education content and maximizes or optimizes the outputs um, within the market context that is Nigeria, and perhaps, hopefully, in the future, later Africa, like wider Africa?
it is such a good question, and it's one that I've been asking myself, and I've had a number of communities also asking themselves that. The first thing that we're trying to do is try to localize our curriculum content. That's the first thing that we're trying to do, and that needs money. That needs approval from the government level. So localize our curriculum content. What is it meant to look like? And not all of it, to be honest, because some of what I put my mic on mute. I hope I haven't been on mute all this time. So the first
No,
thing
no, no.
is
It was only 2 seconds.
okay. All right. So getting government intervention in the colleges of education is something that we're also trying to do to say how do we change this thing from what it currently is to what it should be or what it could be is what we're looking at. We're also saying, you know what, the same way in a lot of organizations, multinationals would say, oh, we need local content. So what exactly should local content look like in the curriculum? Those are the stages where a lot of us are right now, trying to make those definitions and creating context for it and finding the people who can provide this local content in a structured and organized manner. Because if it is not structured and organized, then we cannot get data from it. And if you cannot get data from something, then you don't know if it's working or not. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do right now. Another thing that we're trying to do is to look at the home, and say, you know what, in your homes, what are you doing differently? How are you providing opportunity for your young children, your older children to connect with their culture, with their roots, right? Without necessarily throwing away everything that they know and everything that currently exists, but almost to give them identity so that they do not go out there and then be confused as to who they are and where they're meant to be. So those are the kind of things that we're beginning to look at, and I'm hoping that it can take root and we can run with it quicker.
Thank you so much, Mrs. KK. And without further ado, I will be putting up the LMS link on Clubhouse for those who would want to check it out. It is lms.ngdevhub .com, and it's effectively um, not just creating a different LMS, but actually working towards localizing that content and having it directed towards the context rather, and continent of Africa, and Nigeria specifically. And I guess this is something that Mrs. KK, with a vast wealth of experience, would perhaps be partnering with us on as well. Ms. KK, please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, is Ms. KK still
Sorry,
with us?
100%, absolutely. I mean, it is a fantastic platform, to be honest. There's just so much. So if you're that person who there's just so much on that platform already, and so you can begin to learn. And it's not just about there's just so much. I'm looking at microbiology for nurses, response science. So it's almost like we're giving you not just the fish, we're giving you the hook, we're teaching you to fish, we're giving you the bait. So absolutely, it is something that I will be more than happy to push with my platforms and with my community, within my communities. I think it's beautiful. It is beautiful.
Thank you so much, Mrs. KK. And more so, she spoke about microbiology, which is interesting because we actually had spoken about that yesterday as well. And it's a work in progress, but we are so sure that with the thought leaders actually is the more specific term. We've heard the powerful words of Mrs. KK here. And with the minds at the table and with equity, equality, and equality, and looking forward towards the common benefits and mutual interest of humanity as a whole in a sustainable way, we believe the sky really truly is our limit. And so without further ado, I would like Mr. Kike to remain here as well, but I will now introduce the next speaker who has also dabbled in education in terms of building a system that's disconnected from the net, that's basically like a wiki and can teach students who do not have access to the internet, which is a thing that is very occurrent in Africa and Nigeria. I know this may be foreign to our Western listeners. This is something quite common in Nigeria. He is a convener at Tech Expo Africa, serial entrepreneur, and a network designer and administrator. So without further ado, I will welcome the powerful man that is Mr. Shola Kenny, Mr. Olushola Kehinde. You have the floor, my brother. Take us away for the next 20 minutes.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good evening to everyone. It's great to be here and to share with others. Thank you for having me once again. It's a great time to always share resource, share knowledge with others, and then we can always learn. If there's need to unlearn and relearn, please do that. And great conversation from KK. I always say to KK anytime listening to her that energy course, she's got great vibe and all that. And kudos to you, madam. If we look
Thank
at
you.
what I will be talking about, thank you. If we look at what we'll be talking about this evening, we're actually looking into IT network infrastructure and then talking about the future for African data. Um, if we look at a couple of things in terms of trying to look at the sub-Saharan Africa population in terms of access to mobile internet services, it will shock you to know that it's just less than 32% of access, internet mobile access that we have as at following Continent Mobile, I mean, the industry group GSMA research in end of 2020, it's just about less than 32% of sub-Saharan Africa population had access to mobile internet services. We also look at the 4G itself, it only accounted for 12% of the continent's mobile phones connection. So if we really look at it, a lot of things in terms of the progress, yeah, the progress is extending access to digital services in the recent years, clearly demonstrating the value of investment in digital infrastructure in Africa. But we also need to look at the potential for the continent's tech-enabled industry to accelerate once again the infrastructural backbone, which is very key, looking at the infrastructural backbone. Some of us might know that IHS is a company that is in charge of telco and network infrastructure. I'm very sure of Nigeria. I know they also cover a couple of African countries. What actually brought about this initiative? I can remember in 2015 when I worked with Airtel, Siemens, Alcatel, Lucent, and a couple of all these other companies, they were the ones managing the network infrastructure in terms of the mass and all that. Well, it was a bit expensive, and they were working directly with these telecommunication companies in terms of MTN, Airtel, and all those things. Over time, these guys looked at it that they are having serious issue in terms of maintenance of those network infrastructure, in terms of the mass, in terms of when looking at the mass, radio wave corrections, point to point, and all that. And then they decided to hand over all this infrastructure to IHS as a company to start managing all these things. And looking at that, IHS Towers has become a major tower company in Africa because right now it has even become the largest African country to be listed in the New York Stock Exchange when it launched its IPO in October 2020. And as at that time, the company was valued at $7 billion. And what is all this trying to, where am I driving at with all these things in terms of looking at the IT network infrastructure? IHS is like the major company that manages all this telecom network infrastructure in terms of for major telco companies in Nigeria and a couple of other African countries. And these guys are doing so well. And why I'm saying this is that we also need to look at how we can expand this thing based on the metrics I shared the other time about just looking at the 4G itself. 4G is just less 12% of the total continent in terms of Africa had access to 4G. Sometimes you'll be in some major African countries, and it's so difficult to connect for you to even get as up to 10 megabytes in terms of internet speed. It's very difficult. So why am I saying all these things? We need to look at how we need to look into mega investment, because investment pieces behind all these digital infrastructure gains a lot of traction. I mean, there are several major projects under construction, which potentially bring about transformation for internet users in the part of Africa. Let me say this to you. It will interest you to know that Google is actually funding a subsea cable called Equano, which will extend along the continent's Atlantic coastline with landing points in Nigeria, Namibia, and South Africa. And the tech giant actually claims that the cable, which is due for completion in the second half of 2022, will actually triple internet speed in some countries. Facebook also is one of the partners behind even a more ambitious to Africa cable that is also set to be the world's longest cable connection, which is actually going to connect about 26 countries in Africa. Yeah, 26 countries in Africa, Europe, and also the Middle East. Why am I saying this? If you look at these companies that we're talking about, they are majorly foreign countries. So I'm sharing this information to kind of challenge the Africans. Yeah, I know Mike Adenuga actually also has a sub-key cable, which we call the Glow One. And it's like the major tier one company that actually shares to the other telco companies. So we need to also have some African unicorns in terms of creating subsea last mile connections to help us in terms of the data speed and also make this data more affordable for a lot of people out there in terms of the citizens out there. And looking at African countries, I've been privileged to travel to a couple of African countries. And I was really glad when I visited Kenya in terms of their network infrastructure. The major city itself, if you could see fiber optic connection virtually everywhere on the major road, name it, you just see fiber cable flying all around. And yeah, they are not, in terms of cable management, it does not really look neat. But in terms of connectivity, Kenya is really growing large in terms of network connectivity and all that, building network infrastructure and all that. We also need to look at it critically at Nigeria, because if we're also talking under NDH, we need to look at Nigeria as a whole. And this tends to go to the government in terms of, I know there were conversations about giving right of way, making it free for telecom companies to be able to deploy their fiber, lay their fiber cable. I know Ekiti State actually gave it out for free, that you can lay fiber optic cable for free per each of the meters. There are major states in Nigeria, they are actually selling the right of way. So they are paying as high as about, there are some states that they pay as high as 4,000 naira per meter just to deploy fiber optic cable. And sometimes this fiber cable could go as about 400 meters. So do a calculation of that 400 meters multiplied by 3,000 or 3,500 naira. It's a whole lot on these telco companies. And these are some of the things that is really pulling us back in Nigeria in terms of trying to build more robust network infrastructure. We need to critically look at all these things. And why am I saying this? Because if we go into the blockchain technology industry, according to research, that's while I was checking around on Google in November 2022, Nigeria actually had the third largest Bitcoin trading transaction volume. But the chances of funding miners in Nigeria were very slim because of the mining infrastructure that is not really coming up. And why is that? There are two major factors looking into that. Power as a problem to data center. When we look at looking at statistics, data centers actually consume around 1% of the world's electricity supply in 2022. I mean, in 2020, that's according to the International Energy Agency. So if we are looking at setting up mining rigs in Nigeria, in other African countries, we need to consider two major critical infrastructure. And the very first one is looking at power, and also looking at the network infrastructure in terms of internet. And that has to do with the fiber laying infrastructure. I've been privileged to work in some companies. Recently, I visited a company in England. They are into game development and all that. And presently, they run on 1 gigabyte per second. They are already planning to expand to 2 gigabyte per second. I was amazed. These are things that we can also have in Nigeria if our stakeholders, I know Kate was talking about if some of them can actually work with NDH in seeing how we can put some of this into play. We can. There are quite a lot of professionals under the NDH that we have access to reaching out to investors that are very willing to invest in African countries. But if we're looking at Nigeria critically, there are also some other factors that might not really do that. Some people might say security-wise, but if we're talking about security-wise, all we are talking about now is more remote connection, remote building infrastructure remotely, and doing all this remotely. You don't have to be there physically to do all those things. So it's critically important that we look at how we can deploy infrastructures like this. My working with my over 15 years experience in building network infrastructure, point-to-point, and endpoint deployment, last mile deployment, and all that. The highest I've done so far that I know works is STM1 or STM2, which is about 256 megabytes per second. I really have not seen any company or industry in Nigeria or even Africa as a whole that runs on 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabyte per second. I've really not seen that. I've not done research to that level. However, I've not really seen that, because if we have things like this coming up, I'm sure there will be investor conversations about setting up mining rigs and all that. Yeah, there's a company in Lagos that there's some set of guys that are already trying to build mining rig in Lagos, but it's still a small scale. Because looking at, for example, if you want to mine, for one featured Bitcoin mining rig, it costs about $1,800 to build and operate. But it generates about $5 in profit per day at the current prices, based on the consolidation in terms of BTC pricing. So it will mean that it needs at least 387 days to become profitable. So if you are earning about $5 in mining, and that's why sometimes I'm also into the crypto space, the blockchain technology space. Sometimes when they say we're about going to the red market, which is the bear market, sometimes they usually say that the whales do this intentionally to kill some mining companies, because when it goes below a particular price, in terms of if BTC go below a particular price, let's say it goes below $38,000, it's no more profitable for the major miners, BTC miners, and then they have to shut down operation. So if we look at all these things, we are also looking at setting up mining rigs and all that in Africa. We still have to be very innovative with it. And I'll share this in terms of NIRA, Nigeria Internet Regulation Restriction Association, something recently shared about presently that we have over 185,000 registered domains, .ng domains that are registered. And it's sad to also see that 85 to 90% of all these domains are actually hosted in foreign servers. So they have really been doing a lot of advocacy information in terms of bringing all this data and putting them locally, and that will take me to the next point when we're talking about the future for African data. The pandemic, I could say that the pandemic really made data go bigger. I mean, it was crazy. Everybody was working from home, and then that really tilted into a lot of things. I shared earlier, I think it was a couple of days ago, when I was talking about I also changed career. It was in 2020 that I decided that I needed to change career, and I've tilted from being a network infrastructure engineer to a business analyst and a product owner now. And most of the things I do is all those things are now becoming remote. I live in England, but I work in Nigeria, I work in Rwanda, and also work in the US. Why is all this? The data we are talking about, we need to look at how can we bring all this data to the African soil, looking at Nigeria as a whole. I shared the other time, we have, as in 2020, that's September 2021, according to NIRA, we had over 185,000 registered domain in .ng. So, and most of them are hosted in foreign countries. Yeah, there are a couple of companies that are actually setting up servers, but it's still not effective enough. Looking at network infrastructure in terms of when I talked about internet connection, when I also talked about power. However, their solution right now, I'm also into renewable energy system. So you can always, I mean, there are companies in Lagos. I know of Renewables at Isolop. They are completely off grid, and they have, if you visit their office, they have about 3 horsepower of Panasonic ACs that runs on solar energy system. Their roof, they have over 100 panels. Yeah, the conversation could be, it's not easy for one stakeholder to set up something like that. Yes, and that's where the power of, we all need to be very innovative in terms of how we can achieve this. I remember a friend of mine said this to me sometime ago. He said, Shola, which will you prefer? To be the CEO of a 5 million naira company, or to be a board of director of a $5 billion naira company? It's a choice for you to answer. I'm not going to decide that for you. It's a choice for you to look into. So imagine you're a board of director of a 5 billion naira company, and you're trying to set up a rig of maybe 100 million naira in terms of setting up servers that can and also that can act for mining rigs, and also for hosting all this data we're talking about. I mean, the profits are enormous, the opportunities are enormous looking at all these things. Well, according to NIRA, in the next 5 years, they actually want to achieve having 1 million active users. However, I'm still not too happy in terms of if all this data is actually flying out of Nigeria, out of all these African countries we are looking at. For part of the future of African data, we also need to look into GDPR. That's the General Data Protection Regulation. It's sad to know that a couple of African countries, many African countries, they have not even passed this regulation into law, compared to the other European countries that already have this thing in play. And that's why it's pretty sad sometimes when you are in the midst of some friends, and maybe you are just having a nice time, and then they just pick up the phone and start making a video of what you are doing at that time. They don't consider GDPR. These things are, if you do a lot of, if you do research, we have over 5 billion uploads in terms of data that is being uploaded to a lot of all these servers. Google has over 4 million data set, 4 million servers in terms of data center. Facebook also over 2 million. And all this, our data keeps going to all these foreign countries, all this foreign server infrastructure. It's not good enough. I remember I shared the last time we had a talk when I was talking about YouTube. How do you get your YouTube videos? Do you get it from Silicon Valley? No, it is from cash servers. So YouTube actually deploy cash servers in major communities, major cities, where they dump their the bulk of their video content. And so if you are making a search, it routes to the nearest server, cash server beside where you are resident, just to help in terms of faster connectivity and also bringing the huge volume of all this data locally. Imagine you are trying to watch a video of maybe 500 megabytes, and then you have to route your internet to the US. It's not good enough. So for industries, for companies, for individuals, I want to say this in passing. As my last note, is that companies need to start looking out for how we can. It could be an internal thing, anyways. How we can make sure that we enact this regulation of GDPR, and also caching our data locally. So if we can achieve this, if you do a research in your company and look at what people, your staff members, or whatever resources they are accessing on the internet, you'll be shocked that about 4 or 5 people access almost the same thing, or let me say 30% of your staff strength access almost the same content on via the internet connectivity. So if you have a solution, a system whereby you can deploy a server, a local system where you can cache all this information. I know that's what Intel started doing as of 10 years ago. They were caching the whole of the internet on their local servers, where they don't have to spend a huge, a lot of money in deploying a lot of money in paying ISPs, internet service providers, for that internet pipe. So it's very critical that for Africa, and then pinpointing at Nigeria as my pain point, is that we all need to come together and see how we can start deploying infrastructure. And thank God, I'm really happy that we have. I'm really happy that we've got stakeholders. I know Segalink spoke some time ago. Is also an advocacy chairman regards all these things. We can all come together and have conversations around all these things. How state government can help telcos in terms of even giving them for 5 years. Tell them, deploy your infrastructure for 5 years. We give you right of way for 5 years. Deploy all your infrastructure, and let's see how you can help in terms of internet saturation. It's pretty sad when you're in meetings and you keep hearing, sorry, my internet went down, my net connection went down. We can do better than that. And let me say this, even in a lot of Western countries, the UK, the US, even Canada, those major countries that we have, they also have internet connection issues. There are quite a lot of them. But one thing I've discovered that they really help them is they do a lot of rerouting in terms of leveraging on each other. You will see O2 as a company, they don't have network coverage in a particular area. They connect with Three, they could connect with Vodafone and leverage on that their network coverage at that place. The truth is that most of these telco, it's very expensive to set up a mast. Very expensive. If you want to commission just a 3G mast, you can spend up to 250 million naira to set up just a mast, a 3G mast, before you even talk about the licensing and all that. So it's just all about leveraging on each other to see how we can achieve all these things. And the end goal, the long-term goal of all these things is actually profitable. A lot of businesses are going digital now. They are leaving the physical space. We're going digital. My experience in doing a lot of analysis in terms of businesses and all that, it has opened my mind more to the fact that successful businesses that we see out there, they actually make you principles for them to achieve the successes they have been able to achieve. We need to also move away from the fact that we just do things anyhow on the African soil. It's very important that we start analyzing a lot of our businesses, looking at infrastructure that we want to leverage on, looking at power, looking at quite a lot of things that we can achieve with this. And I will also say this for my African counterpart out there. If you are not innovative in whatever you are doing, your career it die over time, because revolution is really happening in lot of things. I can remember way back, if you are not a project manager, project managers was it was an in thing all over way back, especially foreign countries. They needed project managers to help them manage projects and all that. But right now, they're talking more about product managers, because all these people, they are becoming digital project managers. So businesses are really changing the style of how they work, and then it has, looking at research, it has become more successful in achieving all these things. If you would like to know more about caching of data and all that, yeah, we can always have that conversation. I know Emmanuel talked about that the other time. eBinary is a library system which can also be leveraged on for LMS solution. We currently have over 45 million educational materials on that system, and we call it internet in a box. It does not require the use of internet. So all you can do is deploy it in your local area network and cache all your data onto that server. It also has a community information platform, which is also a Web 2.0 platform where you can actually upload all your content. I'm talking about Economies because it's more of a small scale solution for companies, for institutions and all that. We can actually have um, concepts like this for setting up data centers in our various localities. So imagine, even if we look at internet as a whole, we talk about the global network connectivity. And if you have thought about it, how am I able to connect to someone in Canada from Nigeria? It's leveraging on all these soft sea cables. So imagine in Nigeria, we start setting up different server centers. It could be small scale server centers, and then everybody is interconnected. We are caching all our local data within. It goes a long way. So if you are going to be using the internet pipe, you don't have to spend so much in achieving all these things. Thank you so much. I'll use my mic for now. Thank you to the team.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alushala. Thank you so much. So it's now the interesting part. I mean, your submission was amazing, powerful, and this is where we kind of pick out the highlights for the listeners and those in the audience. So we have a couple questions for you today. All right. So the first question is along these lines. So say we have the power issue sorted, right, Daria? How forward in terms of influencing legislation towards data protection policies and the localization of data storage? Yeah, that's my first question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. If you remember when I was sharing, I talked about when my friend shared me, he said, which would you prefer to be the CEO of a $5 million company or a board of directors of $5 billion company or a $5 billion company? I think we should also use that knowledge for to answer this question in terms of I've been in conversations where let's say even the cryptocurrency world where you see a lot of crypto exchange owners where they have new coins or new projects coming out, and they're not always willing to work with others. They're never willing to work with others. So how can we achieve this? The first thing is that every one of us in the power sector, in the IT sector, we all need to come together. We need to collaborate. So looking at the legislative arm in terms of enacting all this law, we need to start sponsoring because that's the reality. That's the reality in Nigeria, and I'm sure in other African countries. Being able to, being privileged to touch a couple of them, is we look at various legislators, and I'm really happy now that the youth are gunning for political offices. So we can look at the key people in the legislative arm and see how we can sponsor bills. Let's create, so there has to be that synergy between every one of us, power sector, the IT sector. We need to come together, collaborate together, and thereby even the ego needs to come down. We need to drop our ego and see how every one of us can come together because that's what will really make our various businesses to become unicorns. So my answer to that question is we all need to come together and collaborate and see how we can sponsor bills that will favor us in our various sectors. We look at policy holders, people that are in offices, we see how we can speak to them, have meetings with them. Most of these big names that we mentioned, the Dangote, the $10 and all these things, we see them around a lot of all these big office holders. What do you think they are doing? They are trying to see any policy conversation, and they are privileged to be in some of those policy conversations. They immediately try to push the conversation to favor themselves. And that's what we all need to start looking into. That's the way I'm going to bring it. That's the way I see it. And I feel that's really going to help us if we all collaborate together and start sponsoring a lot of bills to favor us as an entity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sholaken. That was powerful. So the second question before we take my brother, my beloved brother, Mr. Malobi Ogbechi, is what will a national digital transformation plan look like to you? So just an outline, a high level. What would a national digital transformation plan look like to you, in your perspective and opinion? Mr. Olushla, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. My connection is fine. So, please come again with the question. I was trying to. I got distracted.
Okay. So, what would a national digital transformation plan look like in your perspective?
Okay, so if we're looking at the National Digital Transformation Plan, we need to look at the outcome in terms of holistically looking at it in terms of the economy and looking at the society at large. I will look at it from this perspective in terms of one, we need to look at business model transformation. It's very important. A lot of businesses need to start looking at how they can modernize their model of doing business. I shared the other time about how project managers are transforming into becoming product owners, becoming product managers. So we need to look at that as one of the digital transformation plan nationally. We also need to look at the processes involved, process transformation. That's also very important. It's quite sad that we don't document our processes in Africa. And that's one thing that if we really want to help ourselves in terms of digital transformation, we need to start documenting our processes. Let me share this. My office, we are also into renewable energy systems, deploying solar infrastructure and all that. And sometimes when we deploy these solar solutions, especially dealing with the oldies, people that are above 80, 85, 90, they tell us it could be after a day or two, and they come back and tell us that I don't understand all these things. I don't understand they want to put off. I don't want to understand they want to put on. I don't understand they want to switch. And I have to sit my team down and say, it's very important that when you are dealing with these people, you need to start putting your process, put it into documentation. And then so we started doing that where we share all the processes involved. It could be in a black and white or soft copy. However, we ensure that after the installation, we give it out for you to understand the processes. If you put up this one, this is the outcome of doing this. If you do this, this is the outcome of doing this. So that's also very important. Looking at process transformation, very important. And the last one I'll talk about is regards to NIRA, when we are talking about digital transformation in terms of our domain transformation. That's very important, and it's really going to help our economy at large. When we're talking about, we don't just have to start registering domains and all that. We also need to critically look at how can we cache or host all these various content on our African soil. That's very important. So those three major things are what I look at for looking at the national digital transformation in terms of the output, in terms of economic and societal, is looking at domain transformation, business model transformation, and then also process transformation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shola.
Hello?
That was
Okay,
pretty
you got me
powerful.
there.
Yeah, 100%. I think our brother Malubi may be having network connection issues, which is ironic, seeing as the speaker is a network administrator and designer. But I think what we can do in the meantime is take some questions from our audience on Clubhouse. So I see that Mr. Martin is here. I don't know if he might have any contributions, some submissions, some questions. Yeah. Mr. Martin, you. Okay. He might be a bit busy. So if he's not here, I also see Mr. Prince. Mr. Prince, do you have any contributions? Okay, Mr. Martin seems to be. Mr. Martin, are you there?
I was it there?
Very astute in asking for, like in the past, we've had an industrial policy to look at how to support emerging industries at home in each country. And without even getting into any kind of a major tariff type regime, it's just a way to provide support while something is scaling. And in the same way with the internet and the educational pieces that were so eloquently referred to with the first speaker, it turns out that the new quantum computers, AI, which allows for an type of enlightenment where we get to ask the right questions as an emerging humanity and a new economy. This becomes more important, how and who has those choices and how that's valued in the future. So it's literally the future of the economy in one way. What this quantum thinking is sort of like adding systems change capabilities to, say, grade school through society, and knowing that we have some exponential possibilities and challenges ahead, and the mainstream economy itself may not recognize the damage that it can do in holding back some of those opportunities. It just keeps wanting to, with the momentum of what we'll call commercial money. And you know that I have a particular interest in alternative currency. And looking into the future, just to wrap up here, because I just appreciate being asked to speak. You're an excellent host, and this is very, very meaningful. And my great feeling and compassion for the well-being of the people there and around the world just grows as I listen. We are co-evolving in our consciousness with technology now. And we're sharing concepts at a faster and faster rate. In fact, our sense of, you said, ideation to ideas, our esteemed host, you mentioned earlier. That means that it's your perception, like the first speaker said, your perception of who you are, your capabilities, what's expected, and if you could kind of see ahead just a little bit, that hope would be so strong and confident. I have to use the language again that something very precious for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Martin. I massively appreciate it.
And the true equity of the future is going to be that bending all of this effort into collaboration towards a common commons, towards the social and intergenerational commons. Thank you.
Thank you. In approximately an hour, but it seems we have some handshake difficulties. So we shall have a teaser of the round table prior to the actual round table, which is supposed to be actually approximately an hour. So based on the submissions, right? And we're all free to sort of speak through Clubhouse, all the speakers here, but do keep in mind the technical processes which we shared with you in the back channel concerning Restream. And I see that most of us are here, which is amazing and very exciting. So based on the conversation so far, I want to know the thoughts of our speakers here. I think I'll go first with Mr. Peter. I'm sure you heard a lot of Mr. Shola Kenny's submissions. Would you like to give a contribution towards that and towards God? I know that. Let me just give you a brief introduction of Mr. Mr. Peter is actually one of our roundtable panelists who is going to be speaking with us hopefully at 9:15. And yeah, he's a machine learning expert, Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, deep learning, Python, blockchain technology, Web3. He's a data scientist, and not just a data scientist. He's worked extensively. Mr. Shola Kenny mentioned Kenya. He's worked extensively in Kenya because he is a Kenyan citizen who is eager and excited about the possibilities of collaborating across Africa and also like with Nigeria and with the Nigerian Development Hub in particular. So, Mr. Peter, feel free. You have the floor. Go ahead, sir. Mr. Peter Oraya, are you here with us? Mr. Peter? I think he might be having technical difficulties, in which case we will circle back to Mr. William. Mr. William, are you able to speak with us today? Mr. William, are you here with us? It seems we're having okay, then we'll circle back around to KK. KK, are you here with us? Do you have any contributions, any thoughts, perspectives?
Could you just share
this is on
question?
Okay, we're definitely having technical difficulties. So whilst we sort that out, Mr. Feel free to transit us into a break where we will,
William?
and then we'll
Emmanuel, KK said, can you come again with the question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Mr. You have the floor.
Mr. I don't know if you can hear me at this time.
Okay. I think you've got network issues.
Hello? Mister, are you there? Apologies, guys. We're having technical difficulties. I'm not sure what is going on. Yeah. So
Can you hear
what
us
happened is
now, Mano?
no, I couldn't hear you guys. Okay, but I'm seeing in the back channel that you guys can hear me, but I can't hear you guys. I can't even see you on mute. Okay, so I will yield the mic again. And we're going to be speaking through Clubhouse as opposed to through Restream. So what you need to do is you need to mute all your Restream devices. If you're on Restream, mute the Restream. Probably, and this is for only the main speakers, not the people. This is what people on Clubhouse and the main speakers as well, who are also on Clubhouse with us. One of which, yeah, one of which is Mr. Sholakeni. So Mr. Sholakeni, you're on Restream, so you don't need to mute anything. KK is on Clubhouse, and she's going to be speaking through Clubhouse, so she can mute her devices on Restream. And then yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Everyone else who's here with us is purely on Restream and not on Clubhouse, so they don't need to do anything. Just the people on both Restream and Clubhouse, you need to mute the Restream, switch off the device, and then yeah, push forward. All right. So that having been said, I will switch the microphone back to. Actually, no, I'll retain the microphone and I'll carry on the conversation. So KK, you have the floor. Go ahead. Sorry, I couldn't hear you guys.
I didn't quite. Hi, everyone. Emmanuel, could you please repeat your question? I didn't quite get you. Thank you.
Okay, so I was speaking about with regards to all that Mr. Sholakeni spoke about and his contributions in the context of data science, the context of data infrastructure, and the likes. What would you say is your is your is your is the thing that stood I see realized in Nigeria with regard to integrating tech to perhaps education or any other aspect of socioeconomic development?
I mean, what would be really great is if we could localize our content and localize our infrastructure such that when we do search then so let me give an example. Sometimes I'm setting my demographics and it doesn't quite look right. So what I'm hoping to see is when we can localize that infrastructure and localize that technology, then perhaps the sort of metrics that we're using in defining things is something that is more, that makes a bit more sense given our context, and I would really love to see that. It would also be great if we can sort of, so I mean, what we see reflected in education right now is what the needs were that was then cascaded into the sector. So can we then begin to see curriculum interventions from people who are experts in this sector? Like on this stage, for example, of course, I'm sure the NDV, the NDH Hub would have all of these sort of courses on there. But how can we begin to create that synergy between what we have in the formal education space that currently exists with what we hope to see begin to exist? I think that would be fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. I'm not sure. Okay, so I was told that there was an echo. It's perhaps because of the Restream, and I apologize, everyone. Please do come back on board on Restream if you are only on Restream. Apologies to everyone who was only on Restream. I didn't realize there was an echo. So if you were only on Restream, please do come back on Restream. And perhaps KK, maybe we should stick to, instead of speaking through Clubhouse, perhaps we should stick to speaking through Restream. I think that would definitely fix the problem. I thought we could do more of a Clubhouse thing. So KK can stick to Restream. All the speakers who are on Restream, you can stick to Restream, because I realize there's no one's on Restream who is actually here. So all the speakers here are either not on Restream or vice versa. So okay, that having been said, I'm not sure if Mr. Peter, are you here with us today? If you are, please give a flash of your microphone. Okay, Mr. Peter is on Clubhouse. Would you like to take the floor? Perhaps give your perspective, your opinion, support, with regards to the submissions that effectively have been given earlier. I know you have a lot of experience in this field, so Mr. Peter, you have the floor. And welcome, LS. LS is one of our good friends.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. My name is Peter, and I'm a data scientist. I come from Nairobi, Kenya, and it was amazing participating in the conversation for the first two speakers who have talked about education and how we can integrate it in our way of learning. I understand education is enabling a person to know, and that's very, very important. We need to know stuff. But I think that one was being sensitized enough in an era where information was very, very scarce. Education was really important in the time where information was scarce. So we needed to be informed because the information was really, really scarce. We are in the age of abundance of information. So we need to change the way we work, and rather than just knowing, we should learn. And my understanding is, first of all, learning is going to be a continuous thing, and it's going to be a lifetime thing. So you'll have to put away your degree, you'll have to put away your level of your education, basically, and use information on a daily basis to keep yourself and to solve the problems. Learning basically is using the information available to practically solve something that exists in the society. We no longer, as per today, almost 20 terabytes of information are released on a daily basis. Only that 7% is structured information, basic information that we can see, understand, and review and make use out of it. We have no idea what we can do with 93% of the information, because that information is not structured. And as data scientists, we try and create a way of structuring that information. Education is going to be on demand, basically, in the coming future, because as we used to have a lecture, person comes and train you, it will no longer happen that way. Trainers will be content creators. They'll create content that will guide you upon anything that you want to do. If you're a millennial, I'm sure you have learned a third and a fourth skills, not necessarily from the school you went, but from the outside, either from YouTube, TED Talks, and other things. So education is going to be, a source of information is going to be always rapid and improved every single day, and improved with different and qualitative information about it. So that's how that's the way we are going. Now it comes to innovation. Innovation will happen in experimentation style. I know we come from a situation again where information was scarce, so we needed to plan. Currently, I think information is abundant, and we need to experiment. Basically, we need to try and what works, and if it works, and we reuse it. If it doesn't work, we adopt another method. So that's experimentation. And then and that's how we are going to fine-tune and find things that suit us and things that do not suit us. So I totally agree with the speakers saying that data protection is going to be key. Having servers in Africa is going to be very important. I totally agree with that. However, we can still exploit the cloud information that we have. We can still exploit other servers, because in my opinion, again, this is like when you know, a person who knows does. If you know and you don't do, then there's no difference between you and. So if you know something, you don't talk about it. You do something about it. So that's how we are going to. We are going to a level of competence, not qualification. Someone won't care if you went to Harvard School, or you went to Cambridge, or you went to Lagos University, or you studied under mango tree. That is the kind of leadership we are going to, be it a conflict problem, be it a financial problem, be it so we need places and individuals who are going to solve us. And the leaders of tomorrow and the leaders of today, I mean, those people, especially us who have been well informed, we don't need to talk anymore, because we have talked enough. So we just need to figure out how we can go and get the solution, because that's only demonstrates that you know. And and I think that's going to be key to be our own content creators. Again, I'll say this: until the lion knows how to write, the story of the hunter will always be glorified. For a long time, African has been, the lion, and the lion did not know how to write. So we need to tell our own stories. We need to create our own content and teach yourself. As much as we adopt and we agree with scientific research and we adopt scientific research from different institutions because they're the same, part of the contents that we need to do, we need to have IP on them, intellectual property on them. We need to have our own media houses to tell, because part of this is how we narrate Africa. At the end of the day, the biggest storyteller is the one, if you're the smartest, but if you're the best storyteller, is what. And until we master the art of storytelling and creative ways, some of us, I know, we're innovators and we speak negative about ourselves. There is no way you can speak negative about Nigerian government, then someone from England will come and speak positive about you, because you are in the Nigerian government. As youth, we are no longer going to revolt. There's no revolution. We're not going to have guns and fight the government. No, we're going to collaborate with the government. We do the things they are doing, but that's the structure that is there. We are going to act it, and we are going to disrupt it, and we're going to come with new innovations. So the speakers were very eloquent in education, and for me, education, because we can distribute education in data packets, we can distribute education as clear and try and improve it as much as we can. Teaching a curriculum for 5 years, we'll teach it for 1 year and keep improving it as time goes by. Thank you very much. Thank you for the contribution. It was very amazing listening to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, was that Peter talking?
Yeah, Peter Oriah.
Okay. Thank you, Peter, for what you said. That was very eloquently said and truth to life, because I'm listening to you talk about education, and I wasn't really going to say anything, but I'm sitting in here, and I told Emmanuel this, that I have my class in here, and I'm listening to the discussion, and he is very on point about the value of education, and the curriculums need to be adjusted and adapted to the environment for students. And when I say students, I just don't mean college, but elementary, middle, and high school as well. Because if we don't adapt our curriculum, our students are going to be left behind, and they're not going to be able to pivot and adapt their knowledge to the change in technology. One of the things that we're doing right now, we're doing a little bit of what's called gamification. So they're working in math games, they're working in reading games, they're working in word games to go across curriculum to get them to understand the value of being able to read, to being able to comprehend, to solve basic math problems, but also interact and work with their laptops. So some students get it, some students don't, but if they're exposed and they're working with it and they understand the technology, they'll be better off. And I share with them on numerous times, there are other students around the world that are learning the same things that they're learning, even more, and they're going to be competing with them more than likely remotely. And again, the danger is some kids that don't want to listen, that don't want to follow directions, that don't want to learn, they're going to be left behind, and they're going to left to stop what's left behind. But the students that are going to be in technology, that are going to use it, that are going to students and talking to them about this to make sure that they have equal access, equitability, and inclusiveness in their learning. And what Peter said was right on point with stabilizing the educational system, but make it to the available technology. Because if we don't, the curriculums will be so far behind that the students will not be empowered and they function in life. And that's what some of the things that I share with my students. And I'll hand back to Mike.
Okay, perfect. That was a powerful submission. Mr. Peter, do you have a perfect? That was a powerful submission. Mr. Peter, do you have a response to that, or because we're kind of rolling with a bit of a popcorn style at the moment. If you do not, then we can take Mr. Edward Ali Dauda ever so briefly. Mr. Edward is actually on, he's on Restream, so I will be passing back to Mr. And then he will be speaking from Restream, and then Mr. Edward take about like 15 thereabout minutes, and then I'll pass the floor to LS. And he will take us for a spin as well. So, Mr. Edward Ali Dauda, welcome. You have the floor. Is Mr. Edward there? I can't seem to hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. I've been listening to all the speakers who have spoken eloquently. I really found it interesting, the speaker before Mr. Emmanuel who said that I think it's time we actually do the work and not speak so much. It's time for experimentation. We should be able to develop academic curriculums yearly and improve on them, and indigenous contents and contexts as well. That is very powerful in of itself. And also with what Mr. Shola Kenny was speaking about, I found that very interesting, the Internet in a Box project he was on. I actually sent you a back channel message wondering if there was a link to that project and his company, since he's dealing with renewable energy and he has vast knowledge about the telecoms industry as well and infrastructure. For me, and I think a lot of things have been said for the last 3 days, which honestly, we can see that the first things first is we need to actually build an ecosystem. We need to actually build within the ecosystem institutions that would be geared towards, local indigenous, acquisition of knowledge and distribution of knowledge, and experimenting with indigenous solutions for our vast, different sectors, and giving solutions to different issues that may arise. And it was very interesting hearing the legislative aspects that Mr. Shola Kenny spoke about. I think the legal push and sponsoring bills was interesting. I think Mr. Shega, I also listened to him when he spoke yesterday, I believe. And I think it's if he's NDH can definitely look into that as well. With regards to how I view in the 21st century moving into the 22nd century, I really, my approach and what I think we are trying to do is say indigenous solutions for indigenous problems and making sure that it's nation as well as localized and across the African continent. With the diaspora, it's how to actually plug in the diaspora as well into it, considering there are different demographic groups of diasporans. There's African Americans, there is Caribbean countries who are very big on sustainable renewable energy and, the blue economy and climate change. And then we have Africans on the continent. We also have West Papua New Guinea, and we have, Black Europeans as well. These different demographic groups have different issues that they are facing, and at the same time, they have different solutions that they can bring to the table. So key the key is collaboration, as one of the speakers, I believe it was Mr. Shola Kenny, had spoken about. And one thing we do have is in a lot of talents, human capital, talents, we have a lot of natural resources. But what we tend not to have is a lump sum of, financial capacity that is focused on developing our human talents and natural resources, creating companies that are of owned by African people of African descent, Black people globally, operated by people of African descent and Black people globally, as well as one thing that was very key was also Mr. Shola Kenny mentioned was documenting the processes and making sure that it's very open source to the point people can actually look at the processes and understand what's being done as well at the local level and in for every different age group on the continent. I think that's very interesting. It's great to be surrounded with great minds of thinking forward and are looking at how we can move ahead with our indigenous solutions globally, wherever we are, for our people, and collaborating together is very key for the success because we're looking at approximately 2 billion people around the world. That's a large market, but we don't tend to have the right people, say, even building technologies, for instance, tech companies, for instance, that have their talents and they're building companies that are not capturing the indigenous population. They're not capturing the imagination of the indigenous African people. And you can see that from how much users have been onboarded on their platforms and the platforms that Africans are actually using. So Mr. Shola Kenny's submission was practically spot on about, data flight, human talent flight, and also financial flight, because people actually use the data to actually process these data to know what they will be able to sell to the market, to us being able to push bills and sponsor bills that would actually make sure that the local talents, especially in Nigeria, IT talent and tech talent, actually create services and products that would actually be beneficiary to the local governments, like the 774 local government, the indigenous people, rather than creating replica of, say, Western companies and then selling it off to Western companies as their exit strategy. I think right now with NDH, it's a paradigm shift, very informative, with very focused and visionary leaders. And you can see that with Mrs. KK's submission about education and the effect of education, which is very important. How do people acquire knowledge and then implement the knowledge they have acquired to create solutions indigenously to our people, on the continent and around the world, in the Caribbean countries, West Papua New Guinea, in the African American inner cities as well. And that is key for us moving forward. We all are bonded together as a global family of highly melanated beings. And we, at this point in history, in this civilization, seem to be at the bottom of, every, social ladder. And coming together and building together would actually start improving our, you know, our existence on planet Earth, to be honest. And protecting what we're building is very essential as well to moving forward. And with that, I yield the mic. Thank you very much for listening. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to to actually listen to all these great minds and visionaries. And we certainly need to access the rights governments to back these visions and ideas and projects, and also get the right financial backing and economic enablements that would actually make these projects, ideas, and visions a reality in our lifetime in this 21st century for the 22nd century. And with that, I yield the mic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Edward. Yeah. Okay, Mr. William, did you want to give a submission? Oh wow. Okay. But we have LS who is scheduled to speak. LS, are you? LS, are you here with us? Just doing a mic check. Because his microphone seems to be is LS? Oh, he's okay. He's in the back channel. Sweet. Okay. Yeah. So I will yield the mic back to Mr. and LS will speak to us from Restream. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and then we can take Mr. Williams, budding student shortly after. So LS, you have the microphone. You have the mic.
Okay, which one do you want me to speak on? Can you hear me?
So basically, let me just give a brief introduction of who you are first, primarily actually. So LS actually is he's a Stanford educated entrepreneur, so that's SEEC, focused on artificial intelligence as a service, AAAS, a public speaker, an author on Bitcoin and AI, a PhD student in artificial intelligence, and a stakeholder and partner in the Sapiens Network, which is an AI blockchain platform that will utilize smart contracts and personalized AI agents that will let users control their own data. He published his book on Bitcoin in January 2017, which is on Amazon. The Bank for International Ideas, how cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence are creating a new economic order. He's the founder and CEO of AIEDS, which is Artificial Intelligence Economic Development Corporation, and focuses on artificial intelligence as a service. And he's an amazing person. I think we at some point will be sharing his link here as well, and I think he's probably hopped back on Clubhouse. I might be speaking from Clubhouse. Okay, yes. Feedback. Oh yeah. Okay, so I think it's probably best we keep it here. So without further ado, Mr. LS, you have the floor. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, it's sort of like a popcorn style. Just opinions, thoughts, perspectives to your.
And I'm greater than 42 years old, so I've seen the diverse and the changes and everything, and went to Stanford much later in life to finish my postgrad work and then my PhD I'm working on now. But I think at the end of the day, education is key. Knowledge is key to me, in my mind. I always tell people in Clubhouse even, I said, most people say, what do you really want out of this world? And I think we just, our natural instinct is to say health and wealth for our family and friends, those that are close to us. And I agree with that 100%. But I've learned at an early age that we're born to die. So we will pass on. It's not morbid. So it's like, what do you do with the time and the knowledge you have on this earth? Because your time is finite. And if what do you do with it? Do you help yourself? And that's each individual's story or path. Or do you try to help others? I'm one that, has been bent on helping others. Maybe because I went to the Marine Corps right after high school instead of college, but United States Marine Corps. But then I saw that there and I also saw the War Machine. And it's like you just realize, how can you help others? Because this time on this earth is finite. And so you can gain everything, all of the material blessings or gains. But does that really satisfy us? And I think as human beings, that's one of the things why I'm a member of Sapiens Network, which is based, it's Dr. Jock Ludick. He's an AI specialist as well. That is like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We're developing this thing, us and a lot of others, to democratize artificial intelligence, which is all of this book that came up. And they talk about AI globally and how it could actually benefit humanity versus what Hollywood has taught us, from the U.S. that AI is just going to hurt us and all this technology is bad, while the real profiteers are making a lot of money out of Silicon Valley. So, I think we need to become more knowledgeable as a people, and this is for everyone. This isn't just only for the African, continent or the African descent, but it's for the entire world of I would say, the 95% of the world population, and how they use technology as a tool, and embolden those companies that are making a difference and change and trying to add value to things that are going on. Because it's funny, I've been in the Bitcoin community since 2010, yet I own no cryptocurrency. I've said this before, and people go crazy, but I wrote books about it, right? My latest was in 2017. And when I wrote the book, Bitcoin was only $900 a coin. And I said in the book, the price will go up. It will never go below where it's at today. It never. And they said, if you knew all of this, why didn't you buy it? I said, I didn't want to be tempted that way, honestly, by the devil, I guess, because I wanted to build something, which I started my company, and build something with longevity to make an impact on the world beyond myself when I pass on from here. And but that's each individual's choice or path. But I watch out, cryptocurrency has taken hold, and I'll say a funny question. I'll say, everyone's, it just fascinates me personally. Like, everyone's so crazy about the crypto world. And I said, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? It's a rhetorical question. And I said, or who is the group? And no one has ever answered it because they cannot. And I said, that's funny because I said people follow a movement because it's a movement that's more important than a person or the group. That's why it's rhetorical, even if I know. But I said it's a movement, and it's funny how the world is looking for that movement, and it came on the heels of the 2008 financial crisis. And now you got governments coming out with their own centrally backed digital currencies. But speaking about how we help indigenous people, my company's focused on building an app. It's actually called Artificial Intelligence Economic Development Corporation for a reason. Because economic development for me was always, when I saw it, was debt-based. Because I study economics and AI. That's my focus. I'm very familiar with Paul Romer's work. It's actually on my main website, who won the Nobel Prize in economic science on the nature of ideas. He literally won it for ideas and climate change with another person. And he's been working on this for 30 years. I think I've been working on it for about 20. So full disclosure, he's senior to me. But I've just been familiar with that work of how ideation and ideas can, and that's what Silicon Valley is. It's turning an idea or ideating an idea and then making it a company and then making it a reality. And then having the economics, incentives to do so and finances from that. But where we've been heading is a lot of it has been more on commercial use, and which is fine, and more material use versus development. But the world's kind of, I believe, shifting toward development and taking these ideas to help. And I think AI will be that cornerstone that builds that, because we're going to get to, eventually we'll get very soon to artificial general intelligence. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. They just, they think, like most people think Apple developed Siri. Apple did not develop Siri. They bought Siri from SRI International, which is a Stanford Research Institute. Used to be Stanford Research Institute. Now it's SRI International. But they basically bought Siri out of a box from a SRI. Just developed things. They're more of a think tank kind of research lab, if you call it that. But they used to be affiliated with Stanford, and they developed Siri. Apple bought it. Steve Jobs bought it, and then built on top of it. But they did not develop it in-house. And that was the first, sort of AI box. And then we got Alexa and all these other things in the West, in the U.S., all these, commercial bots or apps. And so I think we can build upon this, but it's peculiar because people look at Apple and they look at these companies and they look at their $1 trillion valuation, $1 trillion+ valuation, and say that these are just the greatest minds in the world. It's not really necessarily so. But, I think if we come together as a community, globally, locally, we can solve all these problems. And one of the things I'm looking to do is to build a mobile app maker, not an app. I'm looking to create a maker so that individuals can make their own mobile app, Android or iOS, and deploy it their way and keep their data, and it's all on them. It's a distributed system in that sense. And so, not centralized. I mean, we just make it, and then, we'll run AI analytics if they want to know forecasting the economic side of things and predicting beyond the Federal Reserve where the economy is going, using full data and full AI to actually predict, so people can have headwinds, like sort of like a McKinsey and Company, but doing it more accurately for anyone, like for the person who just has a fruit basket and they're selling something locally in that area, to sort of see what those economic variables are. If bananas or whatever are going to be, delayed, they can get that knowledge as well, and then they can have a fighting chance to be able to compete versus just being reactive to what's coming down. That's all.
Thank you so much, Alice. Like I said, you are definitely. I'm not sure if my microphone is. Can you hear me, Alice? Can you hear me? Oh, for some reason.
I can hear you now.
Okay. For some reason my microphone on Clubhouse is not working. I'll leave the room and I'll return, and then I'll give my submission. Here we go. All right. Is it okay? Perfect. So I was saying, thank you so much, Alice. Like I said, you are a friend of mine, and also a friend of the NVH. It's interesting. It's actually quite interesting, where the world is currently moving, and moving very, very rapidly. A lot of people have different ideas and opinions, and I think this is where true leadership actually definitely comes into play. I don't want to speak too much, but I really think the reason why I look up to you, Alice, and a lot of the people that we have here with us, even Mr. William, Martin, is because, to a great extent, these are people, and if you're in the audience, please do follow these speakers, because they are amazing people. Like I said earlier, LS is a Stanford educated entrepreneur. Mr. William is an educator at NASA, and he spent an extensive part of his life in the education space. LS himself on the board of his organization, which you just spoke about, which is Artificial Intelligence for Economic Development and Democratizing AI. Hopefully we'll be able to have some partnerships across that axis as well. He himself is an ex-US Marine. He spoke extensively about that prior to now. So he served the US, he served his nation, and he continues to be a strong patriot. So we have thought leaders and not just thought leaders, but experienced thought leaders who've been there and done that with us. And it's going to be an interesting ride. I genuinely, truly do look forward to what we can and hopefully will achieve. And I think with that, we can begin to start rounding up. Thank you so much, old speakers. Thank you, LS. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Thank you, KK. Thank you, William. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Shola Kenny. Even Malobi, who had technical difficulties. Unfortunately, I couldn't speak, but took out time from his very. He's having a difficult time right now, and I 100% understand because I'm at the same age bracket, same life phase point. And I literally had to rush back from where I was, like my office, effectively, to jump in for this with 2 minutes to spare. So I understand him completely. But thank you, Malobi. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you, Mr. Edward Ali Dauda. An amazing man, a very strong-willed man, but a man who's full of grace and truth and has a huge heart. The hugest heart sometimes are the loudest voices, and they have the deepest emotions. But yeah, we have a familial kind of pardon me if it sounds a bit informal, but that's who we are. That's what we do. We're about family, and we have that sort of vibe. So we'll be connecting with speakers to set up working groups, moving as we move to the next phase of operations. I'm so glad that we have successfully completed the NDH summits, the Going Global Launch Summit, a virtual summit, which is fitting for a virtual and digitized sustainable chamber of business and commerce. We'll be shutting off access to the LMS tonight, so we can finish up work on it, and we'll give announcements when it's ready. And we are, I think everyone already knows we're a registered company, but just for those who aren't aware, this is a registered organization, open for business and collaborations. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. I guess I'll yield the mic back to Mr. I think in order to play some music, if no one has any final comments or remarks. So, Mr., you have the microphone, and we'll be rounding up now.